Chapter 10, Section 2, 5, Blue Chalk Marl. Sin. Micasus Brick Earth, Smith's Strata, page 13. Galt of Cambridgeshire, Geological Transactions, volume 5, page 114. Folkestone Marl, Phillips Outlines. Malm Rock, Hawkins' Memoir, History of Sussex, volume 2, page 114. This deposit consists of a stiff marl of a grayish-blue, brown, or ferruginous color. It contains nodular masses of indurated marl and thin layers of a reddish-brown schistose limestone. In western Sussex, the beds afford good building stone. The blue marl reposes upon the green sand, its bassetting edge intervening between the outcrop of the latter and the northern escarpment of the chalk hills. The denuded surface of this bed forms a soil remarkable for its tenacity, and which, in many parts of Sussex and Surrey, is distinguished by the provincial term black land. It is thus described by Mr. Young. At the northern extremity of the downs, and usually extending the same length, is a slip of very rich and stiff arable land, but of very inconsiderable breadth. It runs for some distance into the vale before it meets the clay. The soil of this narrow slip is an excessively stiff, calcareous loam on a clay bottom. It adheres so much to the share, and is so very difficult to plough, that it is not an unusual sight to observe 10 or a dozen stout oxen, and sometimes more, at work upon it. It is a soil that must rank amongst the finest in this or any other country, being pure clay and calcareous earth. It generally occupies low situations, and where uncultivated is covered by rushes and other plants that affect a moist and clayey soil. This deposit seldom exceeds 100 feet in thickness. It may be traced with but little difficulty, from near Lawton Place, 6 miles northeast from Lewes, through Ringmer, Hamsey, Offham, Plumpton, near Ditchling, Clayton, New Timber, etc., to Beeding. West of the Adur, its place is occupied by a compact argillaceous limestone, provincially called Malm Rock, and which, from the observations of Mr. Hawkins, there can be no doubt is a contemporaneous formation. This Malm Rock continues along the foot of the downs, near Sullington, Storrington, Amberley, Bignor, etc., to Petersfield in Hampshire. On the southeastern margin of the county, the blue marl disappears, and the grey marl reposes immediately upon the green sand. This circumstance is clearly shown by the section of the cliffs near Eastbourne. The identity of this bed with the blue marl of Folkestone, the Galt of Cambridgeshire, and the Malm of Surrey, cannot for a moment be doubted. Not only is there a perfect agreement in their physical characters, but also in their geological position and organic remains. The marl of Folkestone is said, by Mr. Phillips, to contain 30% of carbonate of lime, and that of Ringmer, upon being submitted to the action of acids, indicated a like proportion. In the absence of natural sections, an examination of the wells sunk in different parts of its course are the only means we possess of obtaining a knowledge of the structure and organic remains of this deposit. Availing myself of this source of information, I have succeeded in collecting a most interesting series of fossils, many of which are peculiar to this bed, and are engraved in the plates annexed to this volume. It may be proper in this place to remark that some eminent geologists appear to have confounded the blue chalk marl with the wheeled clay, but the former invariably occurs above the green sand and the latter below it. These beds are also remarkably distinguished from each other by their organic remains, the blue chalk marl abounding in belemnites and ammonites, while the clay, as previously remarked, is destitute of fossils, and its limestone contains shells of the genus Vivipara only. The following sections have been exposed by the sinking of wells in the vicinity of Lewes, and will serve to illustrate the characters and relations of this deposit. Wells sunk in the blue chalk marl. Lawton Place, blue marl, 60 feet. The marl thrown out in deepening this well contained Rostellaria parkinsoni, Nucula pectinata, N. similis, ammonites splendens, A. lotus, belemnites, listeri, etc. The last mentioned fossil occurs in profusion in every locality of this bed, and at Lawton is exposed on the surface of the ploughed lands. Cottage in Moor Lane, parish of Ringmer. Blue marl, 50 feet. The lower beds were intermixed with a considerable proportion of green sand, and contained similar fossils to the preceding. Ringmer Green. The wells vary from 30 to 90 feet in the marl, but good water never occurs until the bed is sunk through and the green sand appears. In almost every part of this parish the marl encloses hamites, ammonites, belemnites, inocerami, nucleae, etc., 3 species of crustacea, an elegant species of turbinolia, and crystals of sulfate of lime. Norlington Green in the parish of Ringmer. Blue marl, 50 feet. The marl was not sunk through, and consequently no water appeared. There is no stratum in the southeastern part of Sussex that contains such an abundance and variety of organic remains as the marl in this locality. From the depth of 15 to 50 feet, the shells occur in prodigious quantities, the greater part having their nacreous covering preserved in the most beautiful manner. In addition to those previously mentioned, I have collected several species of crustacea, scales and vertebrae of fishes, teeth of the Squalus mustellus, etc., crystallized sulfate of lime, or selenites, was also very abundant. In this well, at the depth of 20 feet, a layer of red marl, a few inches thick, was discovered, and another occurred 10 feet lower. This marl is sufficiently soft for marking on paper, and much resembles the red chalk used by artists, but is less pure and of a darker color. Meandering lines filled with a whitish earth, their outline bearing some resemblance to the linear leaves of graminivorous plants, were distributed through the mass. I have observed layers of red marl with precisely similar appearances in the blue marl, or malm as it is there termed, of Bletchingley, in Surrey. Cottage near the residence of the late William Green, Esquire, in the parish of Ringmer. This well gave the following section. 1. Yellow ochraceous loam, 5 feet. 2. Blue marl, containing ammonites, inocerami, hamites, etc., and crystallized sulfate of lime, 15 feet. 3. Dark blue marl, inclining to black, 10 feet. Small crystals of sulfate of lime were decimated through the upper part of this bed, and in the lower, nodular masses of indurated marl, containing an intermixture of green sand with small grains of quartz. These masses are permeated by veins of splendid pyrites, and their external surface is studded with groups of cubo-octahedral crystals of the same substance. 4. Green chlorite sand, 4 feet. Total thickness, 34 feet. At this depth, a spring of excellent water suddenly appeared and rose to the height of 10 feet. Cottage of Mr. Warren Lee, near Cooksbridge. Blue marl containing hamites, ammonites, nuclei, etc. 95 feet. Marl with a great proportion of chloride sand without organic remains, 45 feet. 140 feet. Chiltington, on the estate of John Martin Cripps, Esquire, M.A. Blue marl containing nuclei, inocerami, ammonites, etc. 90 feet. Near New Timber, communicated by Richard Weeks, Jr., Esquire, FLS of Hurstpurpoint. 1. Grey chalk marl, gradually passing into the next bed, 20 feet. 2. Blue chalk marl, enclosing immense numbers of ammonites, inocerami, nuclei, etc., 70 feet. 90 feet. It is unnecessary to multiply examples. The sections above described exhibit every material variation observable in the characters of this deposit in the southeastern part of Sussex. We shall now pass to the investigation of the limestone beds that occur in the Western Division. Malm Rock of Western Sussex. The Malm Rock has been already mentioned as occupying the same geological position as the blue marl. It is compact argillaceous limestone of a bluish-gray color, the lower beds being hard and durable, and affording a good material for building. The grey chalk passes insensibly into the Malm Rock, which forms a basement to the chalk hills of more than half a mile in breadth, and constitutes the substratum of a good corn soil. It may be traced with but little interruption from Sullington near Storrington to Petersfield. A belt of blue clay appears on the north, the geological relation of which to the preceding has not been ascertained. It invariably accompanies the Malm Rock in the direction here pointed out, and is succeeded by a narrow and parallel deposit of ferruginous sand, slightly indurated, the surface of which, if we may draw any inference from some insulated beds of gravel that occur on the highest points, must once have presented a uniform extent of table-land. Organic remains. The fossils of the blue chalk marl, like those of other argillaceous strata, are remarkable for their beauty, the pearly covering of the shells being in most instances preserved. 1. Vegetables. Wood is stated by Mr. Phillips to occur at Folkestone, but I have not observed any decided remains of vegetables in the blue marl of this part of Sussex. In the Malm Rock near Amberley, the Reverend J. Hanley has recently discovered the remains of a large tree, in which the ligneous structure of the original is very distinctly exhibited. 2. Turbinolia conigi. Tablet 19, figures 22 and 24. Inversely conical, aperture circular, divided by numerous perpendicular lamellae, radiating from the axis to the circumference, axis simple, margin crenulated, external surface longitudinally striated, striae from 25 to 30, distinct prominent, base convex. This elegant little coral is from 0.4 to 0.5 inches in diameter and about 0.3 inches high. The lamellae are numerous, generally exceeding 50. The striae on the external surface are distinct, proceeding from the base to the margin, where they unite with the lamellae alternately. This fossil occurs in every locality of the blue marl near Lewes, and appears to be one of its most characteristic productions. It has also been found at Godstone in Surrey, Malling in Kent, and in Cambridgeshire. I have named it in honour of Charles Koenig, Esquire of the British Museum, whose attainments in mineralogical science can only be equalled by his zealous exertions for the prosperity of the national institution to which he is attached. Figure 22, the upper surface. Figure 24, the base. Three, Turbinolia. A small species, inversely conical, compressed, aperture oval, the lamellae numerous, distinct, axis void, the external surface covered with minute longitudinal striae, which unite with the lamellae at the margin. A few imperfect specimens only have been discovered. 4. Echinophatangus. This specimen resembles the aconite from Devizes, figured by Mr. Smith as peculiar to the brick earth. Smith's strata, brick earth, figure 3. 5. Fragments of a ventricose univalve, its genuine characters not distinguishable. 6. Cirrus plicatus, Mineral Conchology, Volume 2, Tablet 141, Figure 3. A conical univalve, transversely striated, having the umbilicus plicated. Occurs occasionally at Ringmer. 7. Rostellaria carinata. Tablet 19, Figures 10, 11, 12, 14. Turreted, spirally striated, whorls 8 or 9, ornamented with a row of tubercles. Body of the lower volution strongly carinated above the middle and terminating in a spinous process on the outer lip. The casts of this shell are composed of indurated marl of a glossy black color, and but rarely occur in a perfect state. In some specimens, portions of the shell are still visible, and these show that the original was covered with minute transverse striae. The tubercles on the shell are more elongated than in the casts, assuming the form of ribs. This species occurs at Lawton, Ringmer, Norlington, etc. Tablet 19, Figure 10, casts of the spire attached to a block of marl. Figure 11, a fragment of the summit of the spire covered with the shell. This elegant specimen exhibits the spiral striae and the elongated tubercular projections. Figure 12, a cast in argillaceous ironstone. The front of the lower whorl is seen in this specimen, but the outer lip is wanting. Figure 14 exposes the lower wreath with its carinated ridge and spinous process. 8. Ampullaria canaliculata. 8. Ampullaria canaliculata. Tablet 19, Figure 13. Ventricose whorls 3 or 4. Transversely and obliquely striated. The striae decussating each other. Spire short. Turns of the spire separated by a deep channel. 9. Natica, tablet 19, figures 31-32. These shells are from Norlington, but are too imperfect to admit of accurate determination. 10. Dentalium striatum, tablet 19, figure 4. Mineral conchology, tablet 74. Slightly arched, longitudinally striated, striae 10 or 11, aperture circular. Is of frequent occurrence at Folkestone, but is very rare in Sussex. 11. Dentalium, tablet 19, figure 28. This specimen is longitudinally striated and much compressed. It is in too mutilated a state to allow of specific distinction. 12. Dentalium ellipticum, tablet 19, figures 21-25. Mineral conchology, tablet 76-7. Nearly straight, slightly compressed, aperture circular, external edge elliptical. The substance of the shell being thinner laterally than on the anterior and posterior margins, the external outline of the tube is of an elliptical form, although the aperture is perfectly circular. The annular markings occasioned by the lines of increase are very numerous, and render the surface uneven. The shell is changed into a white pulverulent carbonate of lime. Casts of the interior, having a black polished surface, are not uncommon. Mr. Sowerby remarks that they are beautiful oblong cones, which remain after the shell is decomposed, and have often puzzled collectors from the difficulty of ascertaining their origin. Tablet 19, figure 21, a specimen in which the shell is preserved. Figure 25, a cast of indurated marl. 13. Nodulus inequalis, tablet 21, figures 14-15. Mineral conchology, tablet 40-3. Involute, spheroidal, umbilicate, aperture obovate, septa entire, slightly concave, the inner septa deeper than the outer. Siphuncle placed near the inner margin. The specific name of this elegant shell is taken from the remarkable structure of its septa, which diminish in depth as they approach the aperture, while in every other species they increase in size with the age of the animal. Tablet 21, figure 14, front view of a cast from Norlington. Tablet 21, figure 15, lateral view of the same specimen. This cast is composed of indurated marl, impregnated with iron. Remains of the shell changed into carbonate of lime form the curved lines which mark the division of the chambers. 14. Belemnites listeri, tablet 19, figures 17, 18, 23. Belemnites minimus, Lister hist annum Angliae, page 228, figure 32. Subfusiform, cylindrical, with one slight longitudinal sulcus. Apex pointed. Siphunculus central, extending through the alveolus to the apex of the spathos part. The form of this beautiful little belemnite varies considerably. Some of the specimens are fusiform, others gently taper towards the apex. Some are perfectly cylindrical, and others contract suddenly. Their constituent substance is a spathous crystallized carbonate of lime, of a radiated structure, varying from a dark brown to a light amber color. Many of the specimens are nearly opaque, but the greater part are pellicid. The largest example in my collection is 0.2 inches in diameter and 1.3 inches in length. Upon the application of a slight force in the direction of the sulcus, they separate longitudinally and expose sections of the chambered structure of the shell, with the siphunculus extending through the spathous substance to the apex. These fossils occur in profusion in every locality of the blue marl in Sussex, and also in Surrey, Kent, and Cambridgeshire. The same species is found at Stuttgart. The specimens delineated are from Ringmer. Ammonites. The ammonites of this deposit are equal in elegance and beauty to any hitherto known. When first collected, they retain in general a considerable portion of the original shell, with its nacreous covering heightened by the changes it has undergone in the mineral kingdom. They are very iridescent and in many instances derive a golden luster from an impregnation with sulphuret of iron that renders their appearance remarkably splendid. Their cavities are filled with pyrites, indurated marl, and argillaceous ironstone, and from the excellent state in which the septa are preserved, their foliaceous structure is shown in numerous examples. In the Dictionnaire d'Histoire Naturelle, mention is made of a bed of clay in the vicinity of Moscow, where ammonites occur under similar circumstances and apparently in the same state of preservation. (15) Ammonites splendens. Tablet 21, figures 13, 17. Involute depressed, carene flat, with carinated margins, volutions 3 or 4, deeply inserted, flat, transversely radiated, radii depressed, curved towards the aperture, a row of distant, elongated tubercles on the inner margin, aperture sagittate, discepiments foliaceous, siphunculus internal. The external volutions rapidly increase in breadth, the inner ones being 3/4 concealed. 2 or 3 radii arise from each tubercle, and proceed with an elegant curve from the inner to the outer margin, where they terminate in angular projections, and form the crenulated margin of the keel. The septa are sinuate, and very foliaceous. The siphunculus is placed near the inner margin. The aperture is nearly equal in length to half the diameter of the shell, and is deeply indented by the inner whorls. The remains of this truly splendid ammonite are common at Ringmer and Lawton, the specimens varying from half an inch to 2 inches in diameter. Small specimens are sometimes found with the carene rounded, and the wreaths nearly destitute of radii, in which state they might easily be mistaken for a distinct species. Tablet 21, figure 13, a portion of the outer volution covered with the shell. Tablet 21, figure 17, a cast in pyritus marl, exhibiting the sinuous septa. Small crystals of sulfate of lime are contained in cavities on the opposite side of this specimen, and pseudomorphous iron pyrites is decimated throughout the mass. 16. Ammonites auritus. Mineral Conchology, Tablet 134, Volume 2. Compressed with obscure radiating undulations, tuberculated at their origin, inner whorls exposed, Back deeply channeled, bordered by large, alternating, compressed tubercles. Fragments of this species occur at Ringmer, but none have been discovered sufficiently perfect for representation. Ammonites planus, Tablet 21, Figure 3. Involute, depressed, volutions deeply inserted, obscurely marked with curved striae, carene flat with crenulated borders, aperture sagittate, discepiments sinuate. The surface of the volutions is nearly smooth, the striae being indistinct and in some specimens imperceptible, as in the figure. The inner reeds are 3/4 concealed. The situation of the siphunculus is unknown. This species is nearly allied to A. splendens, but differs from it in being destitute of tubercles on the inner margin of the volutions, and in the absence of the radiated markings with which the surface of the former species is adorned. The specimen represented, Tablet 21, Figure 3, is from Ringmer. The shell is nearly entire and most beautifully iridescent. Eight, 18. Ammonites lautus, Tablet 21, Figure 11. Geological Transactions, Volume 5, page 58. Involute, depressed, volutions inserted, transversely radiated, radii strongly curved, arising in pairs from a row of oblique ridges on the inner margin, and terminating with intermediate rays on the outer edge. Carene deeply channeled, bordered by alternating compressed tubercles. Discepiments very foliaceous. The volutions are 3 or 4 in number, and 2/3 concealed. The rays arise in pairs from the ridges of the inner edge, and being joined by 1 or 2 intermediate ones, proceed with an elegant sweep to the outer margin, where they terminate in obtuse flattened tubercles, generally 3 or 4 to each tubercle. The carene is deeply channeled, the edges serrato-tuberculate, the tubercles being disposed alternately. The aperture is obscurely sagittate, and equal in length to half the diameter of the shell. The situation of the siphunculus is unknown. This species resembles A. auritus of Sowerby, but is distinguished by its prominent curved rays, by the ridges of the inner volution being less tubercular, and the inner volutions 2/3 concealed. It occurs at Lawton, Ringmer, and Norlington. The figure is from a specimen in which the shell is entire. Ammonites biplicatus, Tablet 22, Figure 6. Depressed, slightly umbilicate, volutions inserted, transversely radiated, rays prominent, curved, bifurcated, arising from a row of oblong projections on the inner edge of the volutions and terminating in tubercles on the outer margin. Carene flat, bordered by alternating compressed tubercles. The volutions are 3 or 4, the tubercles on the inner margin distinct, each giving origin to a pair of rays that terminate in a tubercular projection on the edge of the keel. The inner volutions are 2/3 concealed, the inner row of tubercles alone being visible. The carene is nearly flat between the tuberculated margins by which it is bordered. The aperture is obtusely sagittate, and its length rather less than half the diameter of the shell. This species is thicker than A. lautus, and differs from it in the flatness of the keel and in having but 2 rays to each tubercle. It may be distinguished from A. auritus by the insertion of the wreaths. Tablet 22, Figure 6, a cast of indurated marl, partially covered with the remains of the shell. Ammonites tuberculatus. Involute, umbiculate. Involute, umbiculate. Umbilicus expanded. Volutions rounded, inner whorls nearly 2/3 exposed. Inner margin oblique, smooth, a row of strong tubercles in the center of each volution, united by oblique transverse ridges to a corresponding row on the outer margin. Carene broad, bordered by opposite diverging tubercles. Aperture obovate. A strongly marked shell composed of 3 or 4 volutions, ornamented with remarkably prominent oblong tubercles, which in some instances are 0.4 inches high. These are placed obliquely and united by ridges that arise in pairs from the inner row. The inner volutions are partly inserted, the outer row of tubercles being concealed. The middle of the carene has a deep, narrow sulcus or groove, and is bordered by the marginal set of tubercles. The umbilicus is in the form of a broad, inverted cone. This species differs from the last in the situation and size of its tubercles, and in their being united by single ridges, which are not curved. In the volutions being more exposed, the carene sulcated, and the marginal tubercles opposed to each other, instead of alternating. This circumstance also separates it from A. auritus. The septa are very foliaceous. It occurs at Ringmer. Hamites. Fragments of the straight part of the shells of this genus are very common in every locality of the blue marl. Some of them possess a pearly luster, equal in beauty to the ammonites, and others show the foliaceous sutures of the decepibents. In this state they are the baculites of some authors. The hooked part of the shell is very rare, but I have had the good fortune to discover a few specimens that exhibit the form of the original in a more perfect manner than in any examples previously noticed. 21. Hamites attenuatus. Tablet 19, Figures 29-30. Cylindrical, suddenly attenuated immediately beyond the curve. Annular undulations numerous, obtuse. The larger limb is suddenly contracted near the curvature, and the lesser one is consequently very slender in proportion. The undulations are obscure at the back. Mr. Sowerby, in the specific description, states that it is slightly compressed, but this circumstance is evidently the result of accident, the true form of the original being perfectly cylindrical. This species occurs at Lawton, Ringmer, and Norlington, and has also been discovered in Kent and Surrey. Figures 29 and 30 are delineations of 2 remarkably interesting specimens, the smaller limbs in both instances being nearly perfect, and exhibiting an excellent type of the structure of the shells of this curious genus. They were found at the depth of 30 feet, in the well attached to the cottage of Mr. Warren Lee, near Cooksbridge, and are partly embedded in the blue marl. The lesser limbs are flattened by compression, and the interstices between the annular costae are partially filled with the surrounding matrix. The shelly covering is beautifully iridescent. 22. Hamites maximus, mineral conchology, tablet 62, figure 1. Slightly depressed, undulations even, rounded, disappearing at the back, curvature gradual. Fragments of this species have been found at Ringmer, Norlington, etc. 23. Hamites intermedius, tablet 23, figure 12, mineral conchology, tablet 62, 2, 3. Slightly depressed, costated, costae annular, oblique, obtuse, curvature rounding. Numerous fragments of this species occur at Ringmer, Norlington, and Lawton. The specimen delineated, tablet 23, figure 12, is probably a variety, since the costae are larger and less numerous than usual. The foliaceous septa are seen in the upper part of this specimen. 24. Nucula pectinata, tablet 19, figures 5, 6, 9. Mineral conchology, tablet 192, 6, 7. Transversely elliptical, elongated, convex, longitudinally striated, striae diverging from the beaks to the margin, decussated by fine transverse lines, posterior side truncated, lunette depressed, cordiform, margin serrated. The surface of this elegant shell is marked with longitudinal striae, crossed by transverse lines, and separated by fine sulci. The latter are but obscurely shown in perfect specimens, but are very conspicuous in those that are worn. In the adult shell, the lines of growth are numerous and distinct. The constituent substance of these fossils is a light, fawn-colored carbonate of lime, their cavities being filled with argillaceous ironstone, which forms bold casts when the shell is decomposed. The lunette at the truncated extremity is large and characteristic of the species. The situation of the teeth of the hinge and the muscular impressions are shown in the casts. This shell occurs in almost every locality of the blue marl, to which it is considered to be peculiar. Tablet 19, figure 5, a cast exhibiting the impression of the hinge, the serrated margin, and the eminences formed by the deep muscular impressions. Figures 6 and 9 are different views of a perfect shell. 25. Nucula ovata, tablet 19, figures 26 and 27. Transversely ovate, rather depressed, obscurely striated transversely, lunette slightly impressed, cordate, elongated, margin entire. This species of nucula is of a transverse oval form, and its surface is nearly smooth, the striae being very minute. The lunette is cordiform, very shallow, and elongated. Tablet 19, figure 26, a specimen covered with the shell, the anterior side broken off. Tablet 19, figure 27, a cast of indurated marl from Lawton Place. 26. Inoceramus concentricus, tablet 19, figure 19, Geological Transactions, volume 5, tablet 1, figure 4. Subcordiform, longitudinally, concentrically sulcated, beaks converging, recurved, lower valve gibbous, produced, margin entire. This shell was first described by Mr. Parkinson in the Geological Transactions. It had, however, been long known as a production of the blue marl, but the imperfect state in which the specimens usually occurred prevented its characters from being previously ascertained. It is a small species of the curious genus formed by Mr. Sowerby for the reception of the large fibrous bivalve of the chalk. The specimens seldom exceed 1.2 inches in length. The shell is nearly cordiform and marked by gentle concentric grooves, the eminences between them being rounded. The lower valve is gibbous and produced at the beak nearly 1/5 of its longest diameter. The upper valve is smaller and more expanded. The beaks are approximate and slightly recurved. It occurs in every known locality of the blue marl. Tablet 19, figure 19, is a remarkably perfect specimen, still retaining a considerable portion of the shell. Tablet 19, figure 15, represents the produced part of the beaks detached from the body of the shell. Examples of this kind are not unfrequent. 27. Inocerramus sulcatus. Tablet 19, figure 16, Geological Transactions, Volume 5, Plate 1, figure 5. Subcordiform longitudinally, with deep, radiating oblique longitudinal sulci. Beaks recurved, lower valve produced, margin undulated. In the position of the beaks and general form of the valves, this species corresponds with the former, from which, however, it is remarkably distinguished by its longitudinal furrows. These commence at the beak and radiate with an oblique curve towards the margin, enlarging as they proceed. The ridges that separate the sulci are rounded and are from 7 to 9 on each valve. Mr. Parkinson observes that on the surface of the casts are seen small and close transverse rugae. The specimens seldom exceed 1.5 inches in length and are found in every locality of the blue marl. The figure is from an argillaceous cast in which the pearly covering of the shell is preserved. 28. Inocerramus. Tablet 19, figure 20. Other species of this genus occur at Ringmer and Norlington, but in too mutilated a state to admit of description. The beautiful specimen delineated, figure 20, tablet 19, is remarkable for possessing the fibrous structure observable in the inocerami of the chalk, and for retaining its crenulated hinge. This shell is probably a variety of Inocerramus concentricus. Crustacea. The remains of this order of animals are so exceedingly rare in the blue marl that, with the exception of a few fragments, the delineations in tablet 29 comprise every specimen that has occurred in Sussex. To the kindness and liberality of William Elford Leach, M.D., of the British Museum, who did me the favour to compare them with the recent species, to which they are most nearly related, I am indebted for the following identification of their genera. 31. Tablet 29, figures 7, 8, 14. A species of a new genus of the family Lycosidae, nearly related to the genus Arcania. Dr. Leach. In these specimens, the shell or crust of the thorax alone remains. It is of a suborbicular form, rather inflated, obscurely trilobate, with 12 or 13 aculeated tubercles. The margin is dentated. From Norlington Green. Figure 8, the upper, and Figure 7, the under surface of the same specimen. Figure 14 is a younger example of this species. 32. Tablet 29, figures 9, 10. A species of a genus of the family Choristidae, allied to a new Indian genus in the cabinet of Dr. Leach. The shell is oblong, ovate, depressed, the surface covered with minute granulae, the margin bidented near the front. No vestige of the legs, antennae, or claws remain. From Ringmer. Figure 9, the under, and Figure 10, the upper surface of the same individual. Tablet 29, figures 11, 12. A species of the genus Etius, of the family Canceridae, Dr. Leach. Transversely obovate, obscurely trilobate, the surface covered with irregular papillae. From Ringmer. Figure 11, the under, and Figure 12, the upper surface of the same example. Tablet 29, figures 13, 15, 16. These belong to a genus of the family Choristidae, intimately related to Choristes. Dr. Leach. This species is longitudinally obovate, convex, with a tuberculated dorsal ridge, having a row of 3 tubercles on each side. The shell is truncated posteriorly, and the margin laterally tridentated. The abdomen is composed of 6 or 7 arcuate segments, and there are 3 or 4 legs on each side. Figure 13, an imperfect specimen of the thorax. Figures 15, 16. Different views of the same fossil. In the former, the abdomen is seen folded beneath the thorax, and there are rudiments of legs on each side. The latter shows the upper surface with the tuberculated dorsal ridge. The commencement of the abdomen appears at the base. 35. Fragments of the abdomen of 2 kinds of Astecidae, Dr. Leach. These are too imperfect to require any observation. Remains of fishes. These occur so rarely that the following are the only examples in my possession. 36. Scales of some unknown fish. 37. A small vertebra. 38. A tricuspid tooth, resembling those of Squalus mustellus. Organic remains of the Malm rock of western Sussex. I am unable to give any satisfactory account of the fossils of this bed, and none are enumerated in Mr. Hawkins' catalogue of the organic remains of that division of the county. My friend, Mr. Chassereau of Brighton, discovered the culm or stem of some arudinaceous plant in the limestone, near the Roman villa at Bignor, and also the impression of a coriaceous nut, perhaps of a species of Arica. In the same locality, white linear markings, resembling those of the red marl at Norlington, are very numerous between the laminae of the Malm rock. Are these the remains of algae, of fuci, or of corallines? Near Amberley Castle, Mr. Chassereau observed ammonites and inocerami, and Mr. Hawkins has lately informed me that some fine crabs have been found in the grey limestone of that parish. The fossil tree discovered by Mr. Hanley has already been noticed. Being pure clay and calcareous earth. Young's Agricultural Survey of Sussex. The identity of this bed with the blue marl of Folkestone. The blue marl of Folkestone has been ably described by Mr. W. Phillips. Folkestone is built upon the green sand, and the cliffs on the east of the town are from 80 to 90 feet high, the upper part of which, for a considerable distance from their termination at Copt Point, consists of the blue marl. Crystallized sulfate of lime occurs in this bed, and numerous remains of shells with their pearly luster still preserved. There can be no doubt that this deposit is altogether analogous to that underlying the chalk at Malling in Kent, in Cambridgeshire and Oxfordshire, and which in the latter counties is provincially termed gault. Geological Transactions, Volume 5, page 37. The Malm of Surrey. At the foot of the chalk hills near Godstone and Bletchingley, the blue marl rises from beneath the grey marl, and I have collected from these localities precisely the same species of ammonites, belmanites, nucleae, etc., as those which occur at Ringmer and Lawton, affording a good material for building. My friend J. Hawkins, Esquire, favoured me with a series of specimens, showing the gradual transition of the grey marl into the malm rock. Must have once presented a uniform extent of tableland. Oops. No, I'm gonna go back. A narrow and parallel deposit of ferruginous sand. This bed belongs to the green sand, and has been already described in the account of the strata at Parham Park. Must once have presented a uniform extent of tableland. Extract of a letter from J. Hawkins, Esquire, Bignor Park. The lignous structure of the original is very distinctly exhibited, on the authority of J. Hawkins, Esquire, F.R.S. The same species is found at Stuttgart. Geological Transactions, Volume 5, page 58. That renders their appearance remarkably splendid. The pyrites upon which the beauty of these fossils principally depends undergoes decomposition upon exposure to the air, even for a short period, a circumstance that occasions the destruction of 9/10 of the specimens, after they have lain in the cabinet of the collector but a few weeks. I have employed various means for their preservation, but without success. Varnishes, gum water, albumen, etc., destroy their luster, and give them an unpleasant appearance. Apparently in the same state of preservation. Jean a vu d'immenses quantités d'ammonites dans les couches d'argile qui forment le rivage de la Musco, près de Musco, à 5 ou 6 pieds seulement au-dessus de la surface du sol. Elles sont toutes d'une grandeur médiocre et n'excédant pas 5 à 6 pouces de diamètre. Elles sont de l'espace qui est articulé et décoré d'arborescence. Rien n'est si beau que ces condamnants dans l'instant où on les retire de leur guide. Elles sont revêtues d'une couche pyréteuse, couleur d'or et gorge de pigeon. Mais dès qu'elles ont pris l'air, elles s'effleurissent et tombent en miettes. Elles sont mêlées de beaucoup de belmanites qui sont également d'un volume médiocre. Dictionnaire de l'histoire naturelle, page 332, volume 6. It occurs at Ringmer. Mr. Parkinson describes 3 other species of ammonites from the blue marl of Folkestone, namely A. serratus, A. pansus, and A. ornatus. Fragments occur in this neighborhood which, in all probability, belong to some of these, but they are too imperfect to allow of their characters being distinguished with certainty. The undulations are obscure at the back. Mineral Conchology, Volume 1, page 137. Disappearing at the back, curvature gradual. Mineral Conchology, Volume 1, page 138. A species of a new genus of the family Leucocidae. The recent Leucocidae have 2 or 4 small quadriarticulate antennae inserted between the eyes. The tail is naked. They have 8 legs, all furnished with claws, and 2 cellate hand claws. Rees's Cyclopedia Art Cancer. A species of a genus of the family Choristidae. The Choristidae have 4 antennae. The external pair approximate, setaceous, ciliated, and very long. The eyes remote and pedunculated. The shell is oval and longer than wide. The tail folded under the body when the animal is in a state of repose. They have 10 legs. The anterior pair cellate, the others terminating in an acute elongated nail or claw. See Lamarck, Animaux sans vertébrés, Volume 5, 233.